Hey everyone, Maia here, and here we are again on another episode recording of Talky, Tidbits. So, there's a couple things that I've been thinking about discussing for today's clip, but right now, considering what's going on around me, I want to delve into one of those ideas I had. So, the topic, little kids, children. Depending on who you are, you may feel a lot differently than I do, or you may feel the same as I do about children. Just children, young kids in general. Now by this, I mean, I know some people are all for being around kids, maybe having kids, or having a family, while other people are not so, well, they're more reluctant, right? So that's everyone's different choices, I guess. I don't know. But for the purpose of this discussion, I just want to invite you to consider the inside of a quote I read. Again, I tend to remember the quote more than I do the person who said it, but oh well. So there was this thing I was reading before where it basically said, when you feel you are in a time of stress or anxiety, or when you feel like the whole world is kind of crumbling down around you, or when you feel uneasy with yourself in some way, play with children, because it will lift your spirits immensely. And growing up with a younger sibling, a sister, I can vouch for this from first-hand experience. And I know for those of you that may have also grown up with siblings, I know how it can feel sometimes, especially maybe if you've got the younger siblings or if you were the younger siblings. Sometimes it can feel irritating, right? I mean, siblings know how to get under each other's skin and how to push each other's buttons, how to annoy each other from time to time. But, you know, one thing I've tried to remind myself lately, and even in earlier years when my sister was first born, was this. Okay, she's my sibling, yes, and sometimes she may annoy me and get on my nerves, yes, but at the end of the day, she didn't ask to be in this world, right? She came into this world, and she didn't ask to be brought into this world. I think she was blessed into our lives, my life, my family's lives, right? It was like a miracle. And so we ought to be grateful for that. And I know this may not always apply depending on what kind of relationship you have with your siblings, but just branching out a little bit from that discussion, think of it this way, that at the end of the day, nobody, including you, really, at least from my viewpoint, none of us really ever asked to be here, but somehow we are on here, on Earth, right? We were blessed on this Earth. We were blessed to be on this Earth. That's how I like to think of it. Because, you look around nature and the things you see around you, what are the odds we would have actually been alive if conditions and circumstances had been even just slightly different? I remember reading before that Earth is in what we call a Goldilocks zone. You know, if you're familiar with the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, basically we're in a spot that is not too cold, right, because Earth's not so far away that we'd all freeze because it's not like super far away from the sun. But at the same time, it's not too hot, right? It's not too close to the sun to the point that we'd all burn up to a crisp. Right, so that's why we call it in a Goldilocks zone, because in the story of Goldilocks, she says about the bear's porridge, because she goes, if you don't know the story, I'll just summarize it real briefly. A girl named Goldilocks goes into the woods and enters a cottage that is the home of three bears, and the bears are not home. They're waiting for their porridge to cool. So she goes in their house, which, as we probably know, is not a polite thing to do. But besides that point, she tests each of their bowls of porridge, and she says the father bear's is too hot and the mother bear's is too cold, but the baby bear's is just right. So that's what we mean when we call it like a Goldilocks zone. Earth is in the right position somehow, that it's not overly cold or overly hot. I mean, that is a miracle in itself. And the fact that it is situated just like that in our solar system, and we are able to even thrive as a species, we're able to live. I mean, I think especially in today's world, we are overwhelmed so much by the busyness of life. A lot of us, myself included, it doesn't even matter by what. We're just, I think, overwhelmed sometimes a little bit, depending on how we approach it, by how things are in the world. There's this urge of fastness and speed and productivity at the same time, and it can be exhausting, I think, because sometimes I think, especially with the rise of technology, you feel like you constantly have to be connected to the world, or that you constantly have to, say, check emails or keep in contact or be online, be available at any given time of the day. And it's exhausting because at the end of the day, we are all just humans, right? We're not robots, and even robots mess up sometimes. Because honestly, that robot, thinking of how robots mess up sometimes too, it reminds me of, I'll link it in the description below if you want to check it out. It reminds me of this trailer for a series I watched about a year ago. It's called Gokushufudo, so it basically means the way of the house husband. So it's a series about this guy who used to be a member of the Yakuza, but then he became a house husband while his wife went to work. And I read the manga, and it was pretty funny, and they made a live-action version of it last year. So the link I'm going to provide is to the trailer of that live-action. The guy, by the way, fun fact, the guy who is playing the house husband in the trailer, in the live-action trailer, is the same person who actually directed that trailer, so that's pretty cool. I'll link his Wikipedia page in the description as well in case you're curious. I translated a lot of it as well, with the help of a good friend of mine who's also a big fan of him. But anyway, in the trailer there's this part where he has this robot, one of those robots that can go around the room and clean the floor, and it's supposed to go under an end table, right, under a bedside table, some kind of whatever you call that table, but it just approaches it and then the robot turns around. It doesn't clean that area. So it's at the end of the day, we are all humans. We're not perfect. We mess up. We make mistakes. We pick up the pieces and move on. And we're definitely not robots. And even at that, which is why I brought up that reference, robots are definitely not perfect because they malfunction. And I think that's why you have things like technical support and customer service around the world, because we need people, and we need people to deal with these kinds of situations. So really, maybe you're asking, how does this extremely long ramble, which I know is nothing new when it comes to these Talky tidbit clips, how does this relate to what I was bringing up about children at the beginning of the video, at the beginning of the recording? Well, just think of it as a starting point. Think of the term children as a starting point, because children are so, I think children can be like bundles of joy when they're born, especially, but they can be bundles of joy their entire lives, depending on how you look at it. And depending on how you look at the situation, children can help you see the joy, the happiness, the goodness of the world. Because I think, obviously as you grow older, you still have that childlike tendency to look at the world, but you also have to be wise, right? You have to be wise while still being kind and gentle in your own way. But at the same time, I think children can really be a good inspiration for us all, because you just watch how curiously and how eagerly and how naively they tend to look at things. And sometimes it can be a refreshing point of view just to have someone who maybe they don't fear the workload of an assignment like some of us might when you get older. but it's definitely an interesting experience to think about. So that just wraps up today's recording, but as I leave you off, just think about children. Think about the beauty of children. Until next time, I'm Maia, and this is Talky, Tidbits.